Welcome back to another edition of Celtics Roundtable on CLNS Media. CLNS Media, the leading online provider of audio-video coverage of the Boston Celtics. Welcome inside, everybody. Another edition coming at you on a Monday morning. Evan Valenti alongside Jonathan Ignall, Jonathan Levy. I get that screwed up all the time. Jonathan Levy's here, not Jonathan Ignall. Matt Ignall's here, though. He's producing this thing. And we're joined by Max Letterman. He's a producer for Comcast New England. He's a profound, I would say, Celtics personality on Twitter. You can follow him on Twitter, Max_Letterman. I can't talk today here on a Sunday, apparently. But so basically, in terms of relevant NBA news and how it affects the Celtics, there was the news that came out Friday about the shaking the landscape a little bit. Kyrie Irving wants out of Cleveland, and how that dramatically changes the Cleveland Cavaliers, and in response to that, changes the outcourse, of course, for our very own Boston Celtics here. But Max, you threw out a trade idea on Twitter that now I come to find out that you're just kind of trying to stir the pot a little bit. So you're just an instigator, is all you are. Is what we're getting.
For sure, that's what I live to do. I live to instigate.
That's what makes you a producer, right? You have to generate some sort of content, and that creates content.
I mean, it's the hardest thing is you gotta decide things that people are gonna argue about, really. And I saw a trade that someone else put out, and I retweeted it because my first instinct was like, yeah, this is a no-brainer. Putting a little more thought into it, maybe not the best deal, but it was Jaylen Brown, Isaiah, and Marcus Morris just for salary for right. Kyrie. And I thought, geez, you're not giving up a lottery pick, or a Brooklyn pick. Why not? Just for the contract purposes, because Kyrie's under contract for a year longer. He's, I think, 4 years younger than Isaiah. But, the more I thought about it and the more you think about why Kyrie's even requesting the trade, maybe that's not a guy you really want to invest in. Kyrie doesn't impact winning as much as Isaiah does, to steal a term from Brad Stevens. Kyrie, why don't the Cavs win when LeBron doesn't play? Kyrie Irving is, he puts up great numbers, and we saw in the playoffs, he's just one of the most gifted offensive players I've ever seen.
I gotta come in here, guys. I mean, there's some things I agree with and some things I don't. First of all, I would certainly never include Jaylen Brown with Isaiah, but I could be talking to Marcus Smart, Marcus Morris, and Isaiah Thomas for Kyrie, I think, pretty easily. I think we all agree Kyrie's got more talent. The whole notion of like who a winner is and who isn't, who makes his teammates better. I mean, if Kyrie had the level of depth and coaching that Isaiah's had and the teammates around him, it's possible we'd see Kyrie as a winner also. I don't know if Isaiah had Kevin Love and basically a whole lot of garbage. I don't know how great he'd be. No offense, Tristan Thompson. So I don't know. My big concern is more about bringing Kyrie in because he's younger. He's on a great deal. I would love to have him, except for, do I really want a guy who is more interested in taking shots and being the, quote, focal point than winning titles? Like, how does that help the Celtics get number 18? I don't know how that's going to work out because, I mean, this is a team that's built on sharing and, looking for the best shot and this, like, beautiful flow, pace and space kind of offense. If Kyrie's much more interested in making sure he gets his shots and he's the guy who's got the ball, I just don't know if that's going to work within this system and ultimately a true winning culture in Boston. Is it possible? Here's a conspiracy theory. Is it possible that Kyrie is just saying these words because it sounds like something you could say and people would really be able to relate to rather than I want to leave this team because I don't like being on LeBron's team anymore? Because he's talking about going to the Spurs, which he would almost certainly not just be the focal player. He's talking about going to the Timberwolves. Same thing. Karl Anthony Towns isn't going to get the most shots on that team as well. Is it possible he just said the thing that he thinks he's supposed to say? It didn't really work out great, admittedly. But it's not really about that. It's about not being with LeBron and in Cleveland anymore. I
think, that's another thing. I mean, a lot of people are trying to wrap their head around it. And I honestly think it could just come down to he hates Cleveland. I mean, look, I'm not going to lie and say I've ever been to Cleveland. I never want to go. It looks terrible. I don't like Ohio. I think everyone's saying, why would you want to leave LeBron? I'm like, it's Cleveland. Why would you want to stay?
Because he's leaving too. It's not like there's a lot of certainty around him hanging around. So if LeBron's not going to be there and you're Kyrie Irving, you're like, well, get me out of here now so I can at least figure out where I'm going to be in a little bit and we can have a chance at, like, the Spurs I get Minnesota, like New York is just because, you're going to be in New York City. I understand that. But the teams he's kind of laid out, it's like teams that are already established, teams that are Kyrie Irving away from being really interesting. I mean, I think the Wolves are interesting even with Jimmy Butler. But then if you had a Kyrie Irving in that team, okay, we're talking about a really awesome team potentially with Tom Thibodeau. If you bring him down to the Spurs and you give him to Greg Popovich, maybe Popovich makes that work. Like I think it's more of like LeBron's leaving, and I'm not being stuck. I think it's part like I'm not being stuck in Cleveland of all places, playing alongside Kevin Love and the outcast of characters that LeBron and I carried to back-to-back championship runs. That's just doesn't seem like it's the interest of me. And if you look at that, like via the Celtics, whoa, the door's now wide open. Like if this actually comes to fruition and Kyrie gets traded, first off, they won't get fair value back for Kyrie because they already wanted out. Second off, like who wants to play that? Who wants to trade with Cleveland anything of value when they're not going to be any good anyway? They don't have any picks to give up. I just look at this. If you're a Celtics fan, it's just like, well, like this is great. This is the best possible outcome. Now the biggest hurdle in the conference potentially could be disbarred by the end of the
I wouldn't rule out them getting better. I think Kyrie's so young that you could get veteran players who may fit a little bit better. I mean, I wouldn't rule it out. It's unlikely, but
why would they want to? I mean, I think honestly, if they have an inkling that LeBron's leaving, isn't it better for them to maybe flip him for young assets and future draft picks and try to get future stuff? It's a hard situation that Cleveland's in right now, and it's not like they've got a great front office and ownership there running.
Just hired one. Yeah,
I know. It just seems crazy to me that this is happening now because they're at a real crossroads. They need to get with LeBron and say, we need a commitment past this year because we have two choices now with Kyrie. We can trade him for, a veteran point guard and maybe even try to get a little bit better to make another run at Golden State. Or if you're not sure, then we're going to trade him for picks and future stuff and start building for life after you. And man, Kyrie is a chip. He's a real chip if you're trying to reload the coffers and get more picks. But he really put them in a tough situation. And the fact that he waited to when he did, man. And I guess I saw some reporting today that Kyrie's name was involved in the Jimmy Butler and Paul George trade talks. And that just, man, if Pritchard traded Paul George to Oklahoma City and not to Cleveland when Kyrie Irving was a potential, something that they could have had coming back, that's psycho. They need to examine his head, and I respect Pritchard a lot, but that trade is looking worse and worse now.
I mean, there's no reporting though that Kyrie Irving was actually like in an agreed upon deal, right? It's possible Pritchard threw out the name, and the Cavs said no, thank you. Kevin Love though was involved in the deal, and they could have taken him, which clearly would have been a better return. They certainly could have flipped him for assets. But I want to go back to this other piece, which is I really believe the Cavs can have their cake and eat it too here. I think they can get a point guard like Eric Bledsoe, maybe down the road if they decide to wait a little bit, Jeff Teague, and get a quality young piece as well. And this may sound crazy to some people, but I think Andrew Wiggins could absolutely be on the table here, come back to Cleveland. I also think if it's not him, Eric Bledsoe and one of the many pieces that Phoenix has, it could be a Marquise Chris, could be a Dragon Bender, it could be a bunch of their other first-round picks that are coming up. They've got a lot of young pieces they also have. So the Cavs could get a fill-in type point guard who is maybe not Kyrie level but plays better defense and a young asset for the future. That would be amazing. I think LeBron's probably gone because he keeps not coming out. He's yet to come out and say, I'm staying, as he has in the past. But I don't think going to LeBron and sort of saying, tell us what you're going to do is going to work out super well. He's probably leaving. But don't you have to maximize this final year as the Cavs? Maybe you have to get that young asset too, but I don't think you can just get first-round draft picks and say, well, we're going to suck this year. Then LeBron definitely leaves. Maybe you could bring back Eric Bledsoe and you're better than you think. And LeBron says, you know what? Let's stick around. Like the Cavs, we're better than we thought. And maybe Kevin Durant gets, injured for the rest of his life. And LeBron thinks his best way to the final title is staying in the East and, one more run. Like the Bulls just kept bringing the band back together and it kept working.
Yeah, you guys keep talking about deals for Kyrie Irving. I want to tell you about the best deal ever. It's called HelloFresh, and it's the meal kit delivery service that makes cooking more fun so you can focus on the whole experience, not just the final plate. Each week, HelloFresh creates new delicious recipes with step-by-step instructions designed to take around 30 minutes so anyone from novices to seasoned home cooks short on time, they can make tasty meals. HelloFresh sources the freshest ingredients measured to the exact quantities needed, so there's no food waste. And they employ 2 full-time registered dietitians on staff who review each recipe to ensure it's nutritionally balanced. They deliver food right to your doorstep in a recyclable, insulated box for free, and they're now offering light summer meals and breakfast options. Loyal listeners of this show, because you listen to this show, you get a special deal. Just go to HelloFresh.com, enter the promo code BEAT30 for $30 off your first week of HelloFresh. Again, support this show and HelloFresh by going to HelloFresh.com, entering the promo code BEAT30. So you talk about establishing said culture and how Boston now looks in this general overall landscape, because I do want to keep this somewhat Celtics themed. Again, you look at your potential rival taking a huge hit. Like, the one thing I think about that separates Cleveland from Boston, and one of the things that I always maintained as, Boston might not beat Cleveland in a 7-game series because LeBron is just so freaking good. But my main sticking point was they'll be able to hang with the Cavs because there are points where they can hang with Cleveland, but then Kyrie goes off for 24 points in the third quarter and he sinks your whole team. Now, if they don't get anything of like that significant part of, like, in terms of value back from them, I mean, they won't have two scorers that can go off like they normally do. I think Boston, with Isaiah, if he's at full strength, and Gordon, can at least have a dual-headed attack of a guy on the floor at all times who scores 20 a game. And now if you're Cleveland, instead of trying to outscore them, you have to at least game plan for that factor if Kyrie's not there.
I mean, I wonder if the Cavs ultimately aren't going to find a deal they like for a while and actually hold on to Kyrie. They've got years to trade him. They don't have to trade him right now. They're not really over a barrel the way it sort of feels like they are. And then I'm wondering what happens with the Cavs if Kyrie stays on the team for the next several months. Do they get it together because LeBron doesn't care and it's his last year anyway and he finds a way to bring them all together? Or do they just collapse? And there's a reasonable chance they're just not going to be very good next year if Kyrie stays because they hate each other so much. But I don't know. I'm really curious. Max, what do you think? Do you think that could happen with the Cavs, or do they really have to move Kyrie right away?
Well, I don't think they have to move him. I think that now is probably the best time because, when you get to next year, he's basically a lame duck after, he's like in the Paul George situation where, you've only got the 1 year and the team trading for him, isn't going to want to give as much because they're only going to have the 1 year. It's not going to be, a long term. And depending on what team he goes to, if he's not willing to sign an extension. So I think they're probably smart to trade him now, assuming if they don't get a good deal, they can hold him. But I don't think trading him at the deadline is very realistic because, again, like you guys have been saying, they're not just going to, fold in their tents because, one player wants to leave. They're still trying to win championships now. And I think that, trading him at the deadline doesn't make sense because it's complete upheaval on your roster in the middle of the season when you're trying to win a championship. That doesn't make any sense. So I think I kind of want them to keep him because I just love the drama. I think that this offseason has been the greatest that I can remember. It's so good. I mean, every time you think that there's just a little lull, a bombshell like this comes out. It's just been incredible. I think if they keep him, they'll be able to work it out because, I mean, they don't have to like each other to play well. And LeBron he's LeBron. I think he's, in my opinion, he's the second or third best player in the history of the game. They'll find a way to make it work. The regular season might not go that great, but once the playoffs happen, they'll be fine.
Guys, Danny Ainge often gets criticized because he's acquired so many assets and people are like, what are you going to do with all these first-round picks and all these young players and things like that? But in the last 13 months, 5 top 25 players have changed teams, and now another one of them is available. He's got 3 years left on his deal. He's 25 years old. This is just going to keep happening, I think, in the NBA. And so the fact that Ainge has constructed the Celtics in a way that he can essentially pounce whenever he needs to means the Celtics are just going to be set up for the right star, not just the star, but the right guy. So, like, it was almost Jimmy Butler, it was almost Paul George, maybe it was almost Boogie Cousins, I don't know, but whoever the next guy is might be the right guy, and the Celtics will be ready. And that, I don't think Kyrie Irving is the right guy here, but I think the next guy might very well be. And I'm just excited that the Celtics have been constructed so well that they can pounce whenever they need to.
Yeah,
and they're also the top seed. They were also the top seed in the East. So,
yeah,
I mean,
too.
they were the top seed in the East. They got the Eastern Conference Finals, and they have a treasure trove of assets.
Yeah, and they're finally capped out for what feels like the first time. Oh wait, and not too long, but they're at least capped out with a lot of options going forward, which is very exciting. None of which include trading for Kyrie Irving. So I'm sorry, Celtics fans, not going to happen. I don't think many of you wanted to happen anyway, but just to break it down more further, it just wouldn't work financially for them. Wouldn't work, and culture-wise, if we broke it down here, just wouldn't work. That's gonna do it for this show, everybody. Evan Valenti signing off. I want to thank you guys for tuning in, no matter how you chose to do so. We really appreciate it. If you're watching us on YouTube, hey, what's up? Hit the like button and subscribe to CLNS Media if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're listening to us on the go on your phone, subscribe to the Boston Celtics news feed on your favorite podcast app. Make sure you follow Max He's a producer of Celtics content for Comcast New England. It's Max_LEDERMAN. Very simple to do so. And for everybody that's involved with this podcast, I want to thank Max for coming on because it was even on a Sunday. Watch tomorrow. We're talking with Cole Zwicker. We're going to break down the draft a little bit, see how the Celtics did in terms of summer league status. That's all coming up later on this week and more with the rest of the Roundtable crew. I'm Evan Valenti. That's Jonathan Levy. Matt Ignall is hanging around somewhere. Next, Max Leatherman. I'll be back tomorrow or sometime soon with the rest of the Roundtable crew right here on CLNS Media.